She slapped me, in her wedding dress, because I said no to her demand for my condo, and 200 people clapped. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I stood there staring back at my sister as the sting spread across my cheek, and the sound of her slap echoed under the crystal chandeliers of the grand lakeside ballroom. People were laughing. Some were applauding, like they had just seen a performance. My parents, they just stood behind her, nodding in approval. My mom had the audacity to mouth, "You brought this on yourself." The champagne flute trembled in my hand, not because I was scared, but because I realized something in that moment. They didn't just want to humiliate me. They expected me to accept it. Let me take you back. My name is Emily Greene. I'm 33, single, and a partner at a top commercial litigation firm in downtown Chicago. Everything I have I earned. The degrees, the title, the condo overlooking Lake Michigan, the reputation, none of it was given. I clawed my way up from scratch. While my sister Savannah was bouncing between colleges and relationships, trying to find herself through Instagram captions and overpriced spiritual retreats, I was pulling 90-hour weeks, sleeping on my office couch, and skipping Thanksgiving dinners to meet court deadlines. But of course, none of that ever mattered to my family. See, in the Greene household, appearances were everything. My mom, Valerie, was the epitome of suburban perfection pearls, passive aggression, and a picture-perfect smile. My father, Bill Greene, was once a powerful real estate developer until his empire crumbled in 2020. Since then, he's been trying to hold on to relevance by living through Savannah's curated life. Savannah. She was their star, the one who could do no wrong. Even when she got arrested for trespassing at a music festival in Palm Springs, my mom called it a spiritual misunderstanding. When I graduated magna cum laude from Harvard Law, they barely showed up. And now, Savannah was getting married to Carter Blake, a tax attorney from a well-off family with a jawline so sharp it could cut glass, and a spine as soft as wet cardboard. Their wedding was set in the Grand Lakeside Hotel, with more peonies than guests, and a budget that could sponsor a non-profit. I showed up out of obligation, hoping to smile, stay quiet, maybe even leave early. But they had other plans. 15 minutes before the ceremony, I was pulled into a side lounge room. My mother stood at the window, clutching her pearls like she was about to announce someone had died. "Emily, we need to talk," she said. Savannah was seated on a velvet chair, adjusting her veil with this smug little grin. Carter stood behind her like a prop. "What's this about?" I asked, already sensing where this was going. Savannah looked up, her voice as sweet as saccharin. "We were thinking, since Carter and I are starting a family soon, maybe it's time you let go of that big condo. It's just you in there. You don't need all that space." I laughed, then stopped when I realized she was serious. "You want my home?" "It's not about wanting." Dad chimed in from the corner, adjusting his cufflinks like we were in a boardroom negotiation. "It's about what makes sense. You're single, no kids. Savannah's going to be a mother soon. They need a space to grow." Carter tried to add, "We wouldn't kick you out, of course. You could take our current place. It's a lovely one-bedroom in Logan Square, newly renovated." Logan Square. I blinked. "You want me to trade my 3-bedroom lakefront condo for a 1-bedroom rental?" "It's not a rental," Savannah corrected. "It's month to month." I looked at each of them. They were serious. Savannah leaned forward, her tone shifting. "You always thought you were better than us, just because you make more money. But guess what? Emily, I'm the one getting married. I'm the one giving mom and dad grandkids. I'm the one who deserves a home." That last sentence, it stuck with me. I deserve a home. As if I didn't. As if everything I'd built meant nothing compared to a wedding dress and a fertility plan. I stood up, set my glass down, and said firmly, "No." It was a single word, but it landed like thunder. And that's when Savannah's face twisted. Her cheeks flushed red. She stood abruptly, stormed over in heels that cost more than my first car, and hit me, hard, right across the cheek, in front of 200 people. And they clapped. That moment, it could have broken me, but instead, it broke something in them. They just didn't know it yet. The room had gone quiet after the slap. Not because people were shocked, but because they were entertained. The orchestra had paused mid-song. The server holding a tray of crab cakes actually smirked. I stood still, my cheek burning, but my spine straighter than ever. Savannah turned her back to me like nothing happened. My mother whispered something into my father's ear. And Carter, he looked at the floor, hands in his pockets, pretending to check his watch. I wasn't going to run, not this time. But let's rewind, because the slap didn't happen in isolation. It was the boiling point of a storm that had been building for years. After that first conversation in the lounge, I'd walked back to the ballroom thinking it was done. I had said no. That should have been the end of it. But people like them don't hear no. They hear not yet. As guests began taking their seats and the string quartet picked up again, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to find Valerie, my mother, smiling that tight, camera-ready smile. Sweetheart. A quick word, just for a moment. Before I could answer, she was already steering me away by the elbow like I was 6 years old and had spilled juice on the carpet. She led me to the hallway outside the ballroom where Bill and Savannah were waiting like they were staging an intervention. "Emily," Dad began, his voice smooth and cold. "Let's be reasonable." I crossed my arms. We already had this conversation. "Not really," Savannah interjected. You shut it down before anyone could explain the full picture. Carter appeared from a side door and joined them. This was an ambush. Valerie clasped her hands. "Honey, we understand it's hard to let go, but this is about the family, about legacy." "You mean your legacy," I corrected. "Let's not pretend this is about me." "You don't even use half the condo," Savannah said. "You have 3 bedrooms. What do you even do with all that space?" I replied flatly. "I work. I breathe. Alone. Peacefully." "Exactly," she snapped. "Alone." My mother gasped lightly. Like Savannah had said something scandalous, but no one corrected her. Not even Carter. That space could be filled with love, children, growth, Valerie said gently. "Don't you think you've had enough of the spotlight?" "Emily," that last part cut deeper than the slap ever could. "I didn't ask for a spotlight. I asked for respect. I earned that home. I didn't inherit it. I wasn't gifted it. I worked for it while you were hosting wine clubs and Savannah was taking gap years in Costa Rica." Savannah rolled her eyes. "Why do you always act like your success is some kind of trauma badge?" "We're proud of you, but you don't have to wave it around like a flag. Proud since when? You never came to my graduation." I said, my voice quieter now. "You sent a check." That bounced. Dad huffed. "Oh, come on, that was a banking error." "No, that was a message." I snapped. "Same as now. You're not asking me to be generous. You're demanding I make myself small so Savannah can feel bigger." Savannah's voice rose, shrill and shaking. "That's not true. I need a place to start my family, and you're sitting in it." I took a step forward, "Then buy your own." Carter finally spoke up, his voice nervous. "We were looking, but it's hard. Rates are high. Inventory's tight. So is my patience." Bill stepped forward. "Emily, listen. This isn't about taking anything from you. We're offering you a swap." "A swap?" I echoed, blinking. "You want to trade my lakefront condo for, what, a 1-bedroom rental?" 2-bedroom, Carter said quickly. Technically? In Logan Square, I added. It's an up-and-coming neighborhood, Savannah said defensively. You could meet someone there, maybe, finally, build your own family instead of working all the time. It was like they had a script, and every line was worse than the last. This isn't about space, I said quietly. It's about control. Valerie flinched, like I'd slapped her. Emily, please don't be dramatic. Right, because standing in a hallway and trying to pressure your eldest daughter into giving up her home out of guilt isn't dramatic. My mother's lips thinned. You're being selfish. There it was, the magic word. That condo is the only thing I have that wasn't touched by your disapproval. I said, you mocked me when I worked too hard. You rolled your eyes at my degrees. You sighed when I bought my own place. Now that you want it, it's suddenly too much space for one person. Savannah stepped closer. You're not even dating anyone. What do you need 3 bedrooms for? You don't even want a family. My jaw tightened. I wanted a family. I just didn't want to raise one alone. That shut her up for a moment. But only for a moment. You're jealous, she said. The words were like acid. Excuse me? You've always been jealous of me, Savannah said, voice rising. Because I'm loved. Because I'm normal. Because I didn't hide behind a career. I laughed. A single bitter note. Sweetheart, Valerie warned. No, I said, shaking my head. Let her speak. Let her tell me how normal it is to slap your sister over property and expect applause. Carter looked around nervously, sensing the volume rising. Guests were starting to peek out from the ballroom, whispering, watching. Bill stepped forward, voice low. We're not trying to shame you. Emily, we're just asking you to put family first. You don't ask someone to give up their home. You demanded. And then you celebrated when I said no. Savannah took a final step toward me, her voice a hiss. You'll regret this. I'm the one who brings joy to this family. I'm the one who makes them proud. You're just the wallet. I stared at her and smiled. Then buy your own damn condo. And I turned my back, not realizing what she was about to do next, not knowing that her hand was already rising, not knowing that 200 people were about to witness the most humiliating moment of my life, and that none of them would stop it. The slap came out of nowhere. One moment, I was walking back toward the ballroom, brushing off the last of Savannah's venom. The next, her hand cracked across my face with such force that my earring flew off and hit the marble floor. The sound, sharp and violent, cut through the classical music mid-violin stroke. Then silence. And then laughter. It started with a few guests' nervous chuckles from Savannah's bridesmaids. The ones who'd never liked me because I refused to do shots at bachelorette parties. Then Carter's groomsmen joined in, their tuxedos swaying as they whispered, "Damn. Did you see that?" And then came the applause. Not loud, not unified, but real. Like they were watching the climax of a reality show. Like I was the villain finally getting her comeuppance. My cheek stung. My chest tightened. But I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just looked at her. Savannah stood there in her $8,000 dress, custom made by a designer she couldn't pronounce, staring at me like I was the problem. She smirked. "Maybe now," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "you'll start acting like a real sister." That's when I realized this wasn't just a tantrum. This was her moment. The slap wasn't an accident. It was a performance. She wanted this. The attention. The dominance. The story where she plays the long-suffering bride and I'm the selfish spinster who tried to ruin her big day. And she knew the crowd would eat it up. My mother rushed to her side, didn't even look at me. She dabbed at Savannah's tears like they were holy water. Bill didn't move. He just watched. Jaw clenched. Cold. Carter finally stepped forward. Not to check on me, to gently pull Savannah back and whisper, "Babe, you good." I stood there feeling the weight of 200 eyes on me. Whispers, stares, judgments painted across designer suits and sequined gowns. She deserved that. Always thought she was too full of herself. Finally put in her place. My fingers tightened around my clutch. Not from pain, from clarity. Because in that exact moment, I understood something I had been avoiding for years. They didn't just fail to support me. They enjoyed watching me fall. And that was unforgivable. The ballroom around us looked like a scene out of a dream, a nightmare coated in tulle and expensive florals. Soft candlelight flickered against champagne flutes. The band stood frozen. The wedding coordinator stood by the cake table, pretending not to look. I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and began to type. No one noticed at first. They were too busy watching Savannah bask in her victory, her fans offering sympathy, champagne, and Insta-worthy hugs. But slowly, the mood shifted. Because I didn't cry. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I typed. Savannah noticed first. "What are you doing?" she snapped. "Breaking character." I didn't answer. "Emily," Dad barked. "Put that away. You're embarrassing yourself." "No," I said calmly. "I'm not the one who should be embarrassed." Savannah lunged toward me, trying to snatch the phone from my hand, but I stepped aside, eyes still on the screen. Sent a small buzz, then another, then a cascade of vibrations. "What did you do?" Savannah demanded, her voice cracking. I looked up, held her gaze. I sent an update. To who, she hissed, "My people." I said simply, "My colleagues, journalists, former clients, judges, business leaders, everyone in my circle. You..." What my mother's face paled. I told them, I continued, voice steady. How my sister demanded my home. How my parents backed her. How they called me selfish for wanting to keep what I worked for. And how I was slapped in front of 200 people for saying no. Savannah looked like she had been slapped now. Only this time, there was no applause. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "Oh, I did," I replied. Gasps spread across the room. The string quartet quietly stepped off stage. Photographers stopped snapping. Even the bartender paused mid-pour. I also mentioned, I added, raising my voice just slightly, how everyone laughed. That landed hard. People started shifting uncomfortably, looking down, avoiding eye contact. Carter cleared his throat. "Look, Emily, maybe we can talk. This has gotten a little out of hand." "You think?" I asked. My phone kept buzzing. "Who even cares about this?" Savannah cried. "It's just family drama. No one's going to..." "You think Judge Clarissa Doyle doesn't care?" I cut her off. She was here. She saw the whole thing. She's already texted me. Disgusted. Savannah froze. She knew that name. And David Mendel from the Tribune. I continued. He was covering the venue. Asked for a quote the second the slap happened. The headline's probably already drafted. Dad finally looked worried. "Emily, you need to stop this before it goes too far." "Too late," I said. "It's already gone exactly far enough." "You're vindictive," Savannah spat, eyes wild. "No," I said, voice low. "I'm just done being your punching bag." My phone buzzed again. I held it up, reading the message out loud. "Emily, we saw what happened. If you're willing to talk, CNN is interested." Silence. Savannah looked like her lungs had collapsed. Valerie stepped forward. "You wouldn't go public. You wouldn't ruin your family like this." I turned to her. "You ruined yourselves. I'm just letting people see who you really are." I looked around. The room was still full, but suddenly felt so empty. People whispered now with fear, not delight. Some reached for their coats. Others avoided eye contact. No one was laughing anymore. Savannah's mascara was streaked. Her hands trembled. "Please," she whispered. But it was too late. The truth was out. And truth has a longer reach than any slap. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I didn't make a scene. All I did was send a message. But when you've spent a decade building a reputation in a city like Chicago, when you've poured your soul into cases, volunteered at legal clinics, mentored interns, and stood firm in boardrooms where no one expected you to speak, your silence has weight. And when you finally choose to speak, people listen. Within 20 minutes, my phone had buzzed nonstop. I turned on Do Not Disturb. But the damage, or rather, the correction, was already in motion. It started with a single tweet from one of my colleagues, Sarah Kim, a corporate attorney with 80,000 followers. Just watched a respected legal professional get slapped by her own sister at her wedding because she wouldn't give up her home in front of 200 people. This is why boundaries matter. That tweet exploded. Then came screenshots of my group message leaked. Apparently, by someone in the thread who also happened to work in local media. The quote made its rounds fast. They demanded my home. They called me selfish. She hit me. They clapped. So I told the world. Reddit threads, TikTok stitches, LinkedIn posts, even titled things like, "When success makes you the enemy in your own family." By the time I made it home that night, the headline had already reached page 6. Top Chicago attorney slapped by bride sister over condo dispute at lavish wedding. They used a photo of me, taken from the event right after the slap. I wasn't crying. I wasn't broken. I was staring straight ahead, powerful in my stillness. And the public, they rallied. Comments poured in, people sharing their own stories of being used by family, belittled for success, silenced when they said no. One woman wrote, "My sister called me selfish for not co-signing a loan that would have ruined my credit. This story gave me courage to block her for good." Another man, "I've been the family ATM for years. Reading this made me realize I'm allowed to stop." But it wasn't just strangers. Judge Clarissa Doyle reached out personally. She didn't just text me. She called. "Emily," she said, "I owe you an apology." For what? For not stepping in. I saw what happened. I saw the way they looked at you after. I should have spoken up. "You were a guest." I replied, "It wasn't your place." "It was exactly my place," she said, "because what I witnessed wasn't a disagreement. It was a targeted attempt to humiliate, manipulate, and dominate you." Her words settled heavy on my chest. They weren't wrong. She continued, "I've seen this before, not in ballrooms, but in courtrooms, when people use love as leverage, guilt as currency. That wasn't just a slap. Emily, that was an attack wrapped in entitlement." I didn't respond right away, because deep down, I already knew. And she wasn't the only one to call. David Mendel from the Tribune left a voicemail. CNN emailed my firm's PR department. TMZ found my assistant's number. Local news anchors I'd only ever seen on screens were suddenly asking if I wanted to tell my side. But I didn't need to speak anymore. The video was everywhere. A guest, likely thinking it was funny, had recorded the slap and uploaded it with the caption, "When your sister won't give up her condo, so you handle it." They added laughing emojis, but the internet didn't laugh. They raged. Comment after comment slammed Savannah, her perfectly polished wedding hashtag #Savannah, and Carter 2025 was now filled with angry retweets and reposts of the slap. "You assaulted your sister over real estate, bridezilla," or "Actual villain, imagine slapping a lawyer in public, who also has media contacts. Bold move." Her public image unraveled in hours. Her employer, an upscale boutique PR firm in River North, released a statement the next morning saying Savannah Greene was no longer affiliated with the agency. Turns out, reputation management doesn't look great when you become the scandal. Carter's law firm wasn't far behind. They launched an internal review into his conduct and decision-making. One client even pulled a contract, citing concerns about judgment. And my parents. They went radio silent. Until late that night. When Valerie called, I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice trembled. Emily, we didn't mean for this to happen. Things got out of hand. We were just trying to make things easier for everyone. Maybe we could talk. Maybe we can work through this. I saved the message, not because I planned to respond, but because it was the first time she didn't sound sure of herself. The first time she sounded like she knew this time. They had gone too far. And I wasn't coming back. Meanwhile, my inbox overflowed. Law firms from other cities offered to collaborate. Former professors reached out with pride. Even clients sent flowers not for sympathy, but solidarity. One note stood out. You didn't just stand your ground, Emily. You built it, and you defended it. We need more examples like you. That night, I poured a glass of red wine. I opened my windows. I looked out over the glittering lakefront skyline, the skyline they told me I didn't deserve, that I didn't need, that I should hand over. And I smiled, because this wasn't just about a condo. It was never just about a condo. It was about dignity, about boundaries, about refusing to apologize for your own success. And most of all, it was about finally understanding. I never needed their approval. I just needed to remember who I was, and who I would never be again. By morning, the air in Chicago felt sharper somehow. The slap had traveled faster than any news I'd ever seen in a courtroom. It was in inboxes, news tickers, push notifications dissected in podcasts, stitched into TikToks, debated on breakfast shows. And it wasn't just a viral moment. It was a reckoning. Savannah's world began to collapse quietly. Then suddenly, her dream job at Blythe & Co., the boutique PR firm that specialized in image polishing for socialites and startup founders, cut ties less than 12 hours after the video hit Twitter. Their official statement was cold. We believe in authenticity, professionalism, and accountability. Ms. Greene's actions do not reflect our values. Translation: you embarrassed us. You're done here. Her clients, lifestyle influencers, startup CEOs. One reality TV finalist began mass canceling. By noon, she was locked out of her work email. By evening, her wedding photos, once proudly hashtagged Savannah and Carter 2025, were wiped clean from the firm's portfolio site. Her LinkedIn profile was suddenly under review. And Carter, he wasn't faring much better. The law firm, where he'd just made junior partner McRae, Lane and Wolf put him on immediate leave, pending a professional ethics inquiry. Clients were calling with concerns about judgment, bias, and family drama reflecting poorly on representation. One investor pulled out of a case he was managing. Another client emailed screenshots of the slap video with a single line. Is this who's advising us on conflict resolution? The irony burned. My parents didn't respond to my messages, not that I sent any, but the fallout didn't skip them. My father's social circle, composed of ex-developers, golf buddies, and old money men clinging to relevance, began to distance themselves. Whispers spread at the country club. Phone calls were dodged, invites revoked. Then came the formal review, the board at Lakewood Estates, where Bill Greene had been a member for 19 years, voted to suspend his membership pending internal discussion of recent conduct, unbecoming of community values. He'd built that identity like armor, and now it cracked, just like the champagne glass I had dropped when Savannah slapped me. My mother fared no better. Valerie, who once ruled charity galas and wine socials with a smile that never reached her eyes, found herself suddenly unwelcome. Her closest friends, the ones who used to compliment her centerpieces and borrowed her designers, left her on red. One particularly savage comment under a Facebook photo said, "Maybe instead of perfect table settings, you should have taught your daughters about boundaries." They tried to contain the damage. Bill called me first. No apology, no warmth. Just control. Emily, let's be adults here. We've all made mistakes. This media circus isn't helping anyone. Take the posts down. Issue a retraction. Say it was a misunderstanding. I let him speak for a full 30 seconds. Then I said 2 words. No, Bill. Not Dad, not anymore. Valerie followed up with a longer voicemail, sobbing halfway through about how hard it's been to be misunderstood. Savannah texted me, "You won. Is that what you wanted?" I didn't reply, because it wasn't about winning. It was about truth, and finally refusing to be erased. As the week dragged on, I saw the shift happening in real time. At first, people laughed. Then they reflected. Then they got angry not at me, but at what the story represented. Women, especially successful women, were standing up in droves. The DMs I received weren't just, "I'm so sorry," or "This happened to me too." They were stories of brothers who stole inheritances, of cousins who demanded rent-free housing, of mothers who treated daughters like retirement plans, of families that only showed up when there was something to take. The hashtag #NotYourDoormat started trending, and somehow I had become the face of it. Not by choice, but by necessity. The world had finally seen what I had lived with in silence for years. And it wasn't just online noise anymore. A reporter from the Chicago Tribune requested a full interview. The Cut wanted a profile. Even NPR emailed my firm. I declined all formal requests. I wasn't doing this for attention. But I made one thing clear through a short public statement posted on my own platform. Success does not cancel humanity. Boundaries do not make you selfish. And saying no to people who hurt you is not betrayal. It's survival. Savannah, in her ivory tower built on entitlement, had expected me to fold. My parents thought guilt would keep me quiet. Carter assumed I would care about appearances more than truth. They were wrong. And now, they were watching their golden narrative dissolve. The wedding that was meant to be their triumph had become their undoing. And I walked through the rubble, untouched. Because while they built illusions, I built resilience. And you can't tear that down not with shame, not with slaps, and definitely not with silence. I used to tell myself it wasn't abuse. That what they did was just family being difficult. That the guilt trips, the manipulation, the quiet dismissals were just their way of showing love. After all, they never hit me. Not until Savannah's hand cracked across my face. But long before the slap, there were bruises you couldn't see. And that night, alone in my condo with the city lights flickering against the windows, Judge Doyle's words echoed louder than anything else I'd heard. That wasn't a disagreement. That was a pattern. I poured a glass of water, sat in silence, and let the pattern unfold in my memory, piece by piece. Freshman year of college, Harvard had just accepted me. I was terrified, excited, broke. I asked Dad if he could help cover my textbook costs. He laughed. "You wanted to be independent, didn't you? Time to prove it." Meanwhile, Savannah got a fully funded semester abroad for life experience in Paris the same year, despite failing intro to anthropology. Senior year, I landed an internship with a law firm that barely paid. I worked nights as a waitress, barely sleeping. Mom said I was being antisocial. "You'll never find a husband like this." Savannah had just dropped out of her second university and moved back home. She was welcomed like a prodigal daughter. When I passed the bar, I called my parents, elated. Dad said, "Didn't expect anything less. Let us know when you make partner." When I made partner, they asked if I could help pay for Savannah's credit card debt. I didn't say no, not then. I thought that's what being the responsible one meant. Then came the holidays. I hosted Thanksgiving in my apartment 2 years in a row, bought the turkey, decorated, cleaned everything. Savannah brought wine. She got a toast. I got dish duty. The worst part, I convinced myself it was normal, that I was the ungrateful one, that I should try harder. Be less sensitive. Smile more. It wasn't until the condo conversation, until they demanded I give up my home, like I owed it to them for existing, that I realized what I had allowed. Years of quiet erasure, of being reduced to a bank account in heels, of being told over and over that my worth was conditional on being useful, on being quiet, on never asking for anything back. That night, after the wedding, I stood by my kitchen island, hands gripping the cool marble countertop, and let the truth sink in. This wasn't new. This wasn't sudden. This was a long, slow bleed, and I let it happen because I didn't want to admit what it really was: emotional abuse, financial abuse, psychological manipulation, all wrapped in pastel greeting cards and family dinners. And I wasn't alone. My inbox was proof of that. A woman from Minneapolis wrote me about how her parents made her co-sign a mortgage as a birthday gift to her younger brother. A man in San Diego said his family cut him off when he refused to fund his cousin's wedding. A nurse in Boston said her mother slapped her for not attending her sister's baby shower because she was working a double shift in the ER. Story after story after story. They weren't just sharing pain. They were waking up, too. And so was I. I looked around my condo, the space they said I didn't deserve. Every corner held a piece of my independence. That couch paid for in installments while I was still paying off loans. The art gift from a client I helped pro bono. The desk where I'd built my firm's first contract. Alone. From scratch. They didn't see any of that. They just saw square footage. Because in their eyes, I was never really a person. I was a provider, a utility, a backup plan with good lighting. But no more. That slap didn't just break the illusion for the guests. It shattered the one I'd been clinging to all my life. I could finally see them for who they were. People who loved me only when I made their lives easier. People who believed my success was something to distribute like inheritance that came early. People who thought family meant ownership, and I could finally see me. Not the bitter sister, not the selfish daughter, not the career-obsessed ice queen they tried to paint me as. I was a woman who had built something real, brick by brick, without shortcuts, without handouts, without applause. And now, I was reclaiming it. All of it. My space, my voice, my story. Because once you name abuse for what it is, you stop asking for permission to heal. You start setting fire to the lies that kept you quiet. And you walk into the truth like it's the front door of your own damn condo. Which, by the way, I'm keeping. It was 3 days later when the intercom buzzed. I had just gotten home from court, won a breach of contract case that had dragged on for 8 months. And all I wanted was a glass of wine, my couch, and silence. But when I looked at the monitor, I froze. Savannah, still in her wedding dress. The lace was wrinkled, her hair undone. Mascara smudged into rivers down her cheeks. She looked nothing like the woman who'd slapped me in front of 200 people. She looked lost. "Please," she whispered into the camera, her voice barely audible through the speaker. I didn't move. She buzzed again. I watched her shift her weight, arms wrapped around herself. Her veil was gone, her heels were off, and she was shivering even though it wasn't cold. For a second, just a second, I felt that familiar pull, the guilt, the need to comfort, the part of me that still wanted a sister. But then I remembered the sting on my cheek, the laughter, the applause, and the look in her eyes when she hit me like she'd won. I turned off the screen, let the silence return. She stayed down there for a while, buzzed once more, then left. 2 days later, she called. Blocked number, I answered without thinking. Emily. Her voice cracked. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I shouldn't have hit you. I shouldn't have said what I said. I was emotional. I wasn't thinking. She paused, waiting for me to jump in. I've lost everything, she continued. My job. Carter's being investigated. Our honeymoon got canceled because paparazzi were waiting at the airport. Mom won't stop crying. Dad barely speaks. Another pause. I didn't mean for it to go this far. My voice was calm, even unshaken. You didn't mean for you to face consequences. That's what you didn't mean. Silence. She exhaled. I just want to fix this. You can't. Please, I'll apologize publicly. I'll tell everyone it was my fault. Just help me fix it. I closed my eyes for a moment, took a breath. No, Emily, no. I repeated, you don't get to shatter something and then hand me the glue. You didn't just make a mistake. Savannah, you made a choice. You planned it. You reveled in it. And you wanted everyone to watch me crumble. I didn't know it would ruin everything, she said, her voice breaking. But you wanted to ruin me. Silence again. You said I don't deserve what I've built. You slapped me in front of strangers like I was an obstacle to be cleared, not a person to be respected. I was jealous, she whispered. I always have been. You make it look easy. It wasn't. I replied, you just never looked closely enough to see the bruises that don't show. I miss you. I felt something inside me tug, but it didn't snap. I miss who I thought you were, I said gently. But now I know better. What can I do? She pleaded. What do you want? I want peace, I said. And you're not part of it anymore. I hung up. No scream, no drama, just an ending. And for the first time in years, it felt like the right one. 6 months passed. The city changed seasons. Leaves turned from fire red to frost white. My office calendar filled faster than ever. Clients, conferences, referrals that came from people who once barely remembered my name. But I remembered everything. I remembered the silence after the slap. I remembered the sting, not just on my cheek but in my chest, when I looked around and realized no one stood up for me. I remembered thinking for the first time in my adult life that maybe I didn't need to be anyone's daughter, anyone's sister, anyone's apology. Maybe I just needed to be free. And Savannah and Carter divorced. The pressure crushed them. The headlines faded, but the consequences didn't. Their careers never recovered. Savannah moved back in with my parents who, from what I heard through distant relatives, were spending most of their time in social exile. Their circle of brunches and charity boards had quietly closed its gates. And me, I turned the third bedroom of my condo, the one they said I didn't need, into something better. A sanctuary, not just for guests, but for women who needed a place to land. Twice a month, I opened that room for someone referred by a friend at a legal aid clinic. Women leaving unsafe homes, professionals starting over, students who couldn't go back to their parents. No press, no social media posts, just quiet, safe space. Because I understood now some battles don't leave bruises. They leave echoes. And if I could help silence even one, I would. Sometimes at night, I'd stand at my floor-to-ceiling window, watching the skyline shimmer across Lake Michigan. The view they said I didn't deserve. The home they tried to take. And I'd smile, because it was mine. Every inch, every story, every scar. Not just the condo, but the life I built inside it. I still think about Savannah sometimes. Not with anger, not even pity, just clarity. She wasn't the storm. She was the final gust that blew the mask off everything I'd been pretending wasn't broken. And for that, I'm grateful. She forced me to wake up. To see that love without respect is not love. That family without boundaries is not safe. That being there for people should never cost you yourself. The truth is, saying no was the kindest thing I've ever done for myself. And the lesson, it's simple. You are allowed to keep what you've earned. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to say no, even if it makes others uncomfortable, especially then. You do not owe access to people just because they share your DNA. You do not have to shrink so others can feel tall. You do not have to sacrifice your happiness to keep the illusion of family alive. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. Not in anger, not in vengeance, but in power, because peace doesn't always come from forgiveness. Sometimes it comes from freedom. And that's the ending I didn't know I needed. Not justice, not revenge, just silence. The beautiful kind. The kind that follows when the shouting finally stops. The kind that feels like breathing again. The kind that says, "You made it out. You made it home, and no one gets to take that from you again."